Finland is known as the country of 1,000 lakes. An exacting geographer listed 187,888 lakes, occupying 10% of the territory, interconnected by a multitude of natural canals and rivers. Forests cover 2/3 of the country and constitute the primary economic resource. The lumber and wood pulp are sent throughout Europe both summer and winter. The Finnish way of life is based on harmony with nature. This includes sports, leisure activities, food, and their home surroundings. The conservation of a rich historical and cultural heritage has been the object of undivided attention. Every region has the responsibility of caring for their treasures. Laplanders, or Samis, have visibly maintained their traditional way of dress and language. While the rest of the country is bilingual in Finnish and Swedish, Laplanders speak Finnish and Lap. Laplanders are hunters and fishermen. They have adapted their way of life to the vast tundra, most of which lies beyond the Arctic Circle. Europe's ceiling has Europe's only polar relief, the highest altitude peaking at 1,328 meters in a basically flat region. Lapland's national animal emblem is the reindeer. Reindeer farming provides an important source of income for its inhabitants, who raise more than 200,000 deer. This one is called Rudolph. He helps out Santa Claus, one of Finland's most famous people. The seasons get lost in the north, in Lapland, and to a lesser degree in the rest of the country. The auroras borealis can be seen all winter long during the Arctic night and permanent daylight, illuminated by the famous midnight sun all summer. Swedish King Gustavo Vasa founded Helsinki in 1550. The city was raised to the rank of capital in 1812 on the initiative of Tsar Alexander of Russia. The statue of his successor is in Helsinki's Senate Square at the city center. Alexander II reformed the Finnish state and raised a monument to himself. The Lutheran Cathedral, one of the city's symbolic buildings, dominates the square. The Russian influence is obvious nearby at the Uspensky Orthodox Cathedral. This is unusual since the country is 90% Lutheran. Every weekend, a strange choreography of carpet washers takes over the pier at Helsinki's pleasure port. The boats line the harbor beside rows of magnificent Art Nouveau-style houses built at the beginning of the century. Helsinki's 500,000 inhabitants often commute by streetcar, even though the city center is small enough to cross on foot. The city center revolves around the train station. This is another Art Nouveau building. It was completed in 1919. The National Theatre, dating back to 1901, stands nearby. The statue of Aleksis Kivi, father of modern Finnish literature, watches over it. Mannerheimintie, also nearby, is the city's longest avenue and leads to Aleksis Street, Helsinki's Champs-Élysées and Boulevard, where the city's inhabitants might take a stroll or meet friends to relax. The monument in Sibelius Park consists of 580 steel tubes evoking a sort of futuristic organ. It is named after Finnish classic composer John Sibelius. The Tempeljoko church organ is somewhat more traditional. The church has an unusual setting and is hollowed out of the rock. The architectural wealth of Helsinki is recent, like the country's independence that took place on December 6, 1917, after 7 centuries of Swedish, then Russian domination. Every day, dozens of boats leave the port on the way to the innumerable islands and islets around the city. The main island bears the name of the most recent architectural relic of the capital, Suomenlinna, the Finland fortress. It was built in 1748 by a Swedish admiral and was intended to protect the city from Russian invasion. The fort only provided light resistance in face of Tsar Alexander's troops, who conquered the country in February 1808. Today, a community of artists occupy the island, and its small coves are popular spots for weekend sunbathers. The Soul of Helsinki, a young metropolis in constant search of its identity, is situated midway between water and land. The sea invades the city, its salty mouth advancing to the foot of the main avenues, all the way to the heart of the residential neighborhoods. Turku is only 120 kilometers from Helsinki and Finland's fourth largest city. It is the oldest city situated on the Ora River, which divides the city in two. Merchants and sailors have frequented it since the 12th century. The largest port on the Baltic Sea, Turku thrives primarily on shipbuilding, which employs about 7,000 workers. Turku was the capital city during Swedish rule, seat of the first Lutheran bishop, and the country's first university. The town center is animated by a flower market located at the foot of an Orthodox church built by order of Nicholas I. Not far away is one of the most famous buildings in Northern Europe, the Turku Castle. It was built in 1280 and underwent 7 sieges, was set on fire, and ravaged many times over the centuries. In 1927, a fire destroyed most of the wooden houses in Turku. Only Luerstar and Mäki survived. It's now an open-air museum dedicated to the arts and crafts of the past. A dozen professions are represented here, the least classical being the manufacturer of raw tobacco products. About 12,000 years ago, glaciers carved deep holes into the rock that eventually filled with water from surrounding rivers. Punctuated by an infinite number of islands, the large lakes attracted the creation of numerous cities. Savonlinna is one of the most important. The Olavinlinna medieval castle has been here since 1475 and was built on an island. It was also meant to deter the invaders from the east. A very well-known opera festival takes place here today. Even if opera generates a lot of excitement in Savonlinna's small port during the month of July, the city is generally very quiet. It is a natural crossroads for traffic on Lake Saimaa and for the numerous tourists who come here for holidays. The Savonlinna market is quite charming and offers a wide selection of the region's specialties, produce, and crafts. Rauhalinna is 15 kilometers from Savonlinna and is a luxurious wood manor house that was built at the beginning of the century by a Russian general for his wife. Apparently, she never deigned to make the move, so this carpenter's masterpiece of mixed Victorian and Moorish style became a luxury hotel restaurant. About 20 kilometers from Savonlinna, the Crest of Puncaryu is a magnificent example of the ground movements that originally formed the lakes during the Ice Age. It is 7 kilometers long and lined with small bays. The crest is covered with dense pine and birch forests. In Puncaryu, wood gets the recognition it deserves in the shape of a museum that displays all possible uses for Finland's leading resource. The museum shows the ancestral techniques for the manufacture of boats, modern furniture with some unique designs, and culinary products from the forest, giant-sized toys, and even clothing made of bark. On the same subject, the refreshing village of nearby Kirimäki has the biggest wooden church in the world, with a seating capacity for 3,500 people. Puncaryu is known for the Retretti Art Center. The underground museum is designed around natural caves and underground streams to display the sculptures of contemporary artists. Heading north along the Great Saimaa Lake, we approach Karelia, Finland's oriental region. Here lies the framework for Finnish culture. Karelia extended beyond the current Russian border until the last World War. Joensuu is the administrative center for northern Karelia and is built on the banks of the Pielisjoki River. It is famous for its shipyards, where hundreds of boats traveled across the Gulf of Finland to get to St. Petersburg. Joensuu is the economic, academic, and cultural center of the region today. Life speeds up about 50 kilometers from Joensuu. Champion rally driver Ari Vatanen uses the rally track here. The Finns dominated the races for almost 20 years, and Ari Vatanen is their most famous driver. In the forest close to his hometown of Tuupovaara, a training track was installed which is accessible year-round to everybody. What link is there between this wooden chapel and the famous rally driver? The answer lies in the hands of a famous Finnish sculptress, Eva Rinanen. She creates monumental woodwork by carving the trunks of the tree.
When I begin to work, I look for all the quirks in the wood. Then I use these quirks to create the most harmony in the piece.
Eva Rinanen has been making sculptures for 30 years, and they have been exported all over the world. Obviously, wood is an important part of the Karelian landscape. Lieksa is at the center of large-scale international forest industry, and architectural use of lumber is highly developed. Numerous houses in Lieksa were designed through research and talent. Lieksa has an outdoor museum dedicated to construction and the Karelian way of life. The museum has 70 historic buildings representing the artistry of Finland's woodworkers and carpenters. In Karelia, adventure sports often put rhyme and reason into wood and water. These classically designed boats have been renovated, not always to stop the leaks, and are used to take some rather unstable rides. Excitement is the magic word for kayakers who like taking on the numerous rapids in the region. There are others who prefer fishing for salmon, trout, and various breams in streams teeming with fish. A campfire, some robust provisions, and the soothing sound of music follow the exertion. Every summer, Lieksa is a meeting place for brass instruments in its well-known music festival. Lieksa is the ideal point of departure to cross Lake Pielinen. It is 100 kilometers long and about 40 kilometers in width at its widest point. Navigation is a time-worn tradition here. Until not long ago, the first steamers loaded with produce transported lumber towards the main cities on the coast. Ferries replaced them basically with tourism in mind, carrying them to one of the most prestigious sites of Finland, the Koli Hills. An impressive panorama opens onto the lake. The chiseled outlines of uniform forest land is the key to Koli's beauty. Growing interest in Karelia brought artists of national romanticism, like Galen Kalela and Sibelius, at the end of the last century, and made Koli a primary location for inspiration. Nurmes, the village of 1,000 birches, is situated to the extreme north of Lake Pielinen. The results of Karelian architectural tradition can be found in the impressive home of the Bomba family. It has been identically reconstructed to the last detail, like a 19th century Karelian house. There are no nails, screws, or kingpins in the entire 25-meter long by 10-meter wide building. If the Karelian flag does not fly beside every house in the province, certainly making piraka or Karelian pies is done everywhere. Some dexterity is necessary to give the rice-filled pastries its peculiar shape. Then, a few minutes in the oven, and the piraka are ready to be eaten with a mixture of chopped hard-boiled eggs and butter. Kuopio, on the shores of Lake Kalevesi, is situated right at the heart of the lake region in the province of Savo. Kuopio is a constantly growing industrial area, both from the perspective of urban planning and demography. Many of Kuopio's 85,000 inhabitants take advantage of this charming, pleasant lake resort, with a fine sandy beach that is difficult to imagine at this latitude. In the winter, the beach is covered with snowbanks, and the lake's surface is a thick layer of ice. The city center is situated around Kaupatori Square. The indoor market at the far end is colorful and full of decorative imagery. On the other end of the square, in front of City Hall that dates back to the end of the last century, is a modern bandstand where the townspeople can come to hear the musicians who play almost every day during the summer. In the center of the square is Finland's richest market, where one can find specialties from all around the country. Lake Kalevesi has a quality that is sacred for the people of Kuopio. Like most Finns, they believe in the magic powers of the elements that are considered divine emissions. This perception comes from a long tradition of the great national epic collection of songs and ancient mythical poems, inspired by the heroes of the Kalevala. The Finns believe wholeheartedly in the virtues of the sauna. This one, the biggest in the country, can hold up to 70 people. The old proverb, "a Finn builds his sauna before his home," probably comes from the fact that there are more than 2 million in a country with only 5 million inhabitants. The lake region fades around the towns of Kajaani and Kumo, 600 kilometers north of Helsinki. These are the last towns before the vast wooded plateau that connects to Lapland. A winter breeze already seems to be blowing through Vuokatti, where a tunnel has been built for cross-country skiers to train even during the summer. A touch of surrealism. Kumo is famous for its festival of chamber music that takes place in a beautiful hall completely made of wood. It is necessary to reserve months in advance to enjoy the full benefits of the festival. Local music lovers make every effort to ensure that they will not miss a special concert. Northern Finland includes Lapland, an immense territory that also spreads over northern Sweden and Norway. There are about 50,000 Laplanders, only 6,000 live in Finland. Southeast of Rovaniemi, 200 kilometers away, is Kusamo. It is the southernmost city in this part of the country. Kusamo's 20,000 inhabitants live off the forest, farming, and fishing. Net fishing is practiced using old wooden boats. They are used mostly for catching muikus or pollen, a small white fish that serves as an ecological indicator. They live only in pure, unpolluted virgin water. Muikus meet the same fate as most Finland's fish. They will be smoked. This is done with artisanal finesse. Sugar cubes are placed under the grill, the fire is stoked, and the small smoking room does the rest. Delicious. Another tradition is to ride the floaters. There are not very many left who can cross dozens of kilometers on the floating trunks. Boats, roads, or trains are now used to transport the trunks. All that remains is a spectacular demonstration of skill and force. The Ulanka National Park is spread out around Kusamo. You can cross it on the country's renowned Bears Ring hiking trail. Even if Lapland's wildlife stays out of sight, you can still take advantage of the 70 kilometers of trails and appreciate the region's natural assets. There are 3 major rivers interspersed with rapids that offer some exciting whitewater rafting. Finland is a true paradise for rafting and canoeing enthusiasts. You can travel over 350 kilometers without ever leaving the boat. The Ruukkatunturi mountain range begins about 25 kilometers from Kusamo. The 462-meter-high peaks offer much enjoyment for sports fans. During the summer, you can practice a very special kind of bobsledding and skiing. Summer in Lapland barely lasts 2 months, but the sun never sets during those 2 months. The ground is covered with snow from October till May, bringing with it some pleasant surprises, especially around December 25th.
Let's go.
A guide will lead you to a legendary site.
This is the door to the Christmas village. When you cross this boundary, you may see some magic creatures like elves.
Vous devrez voir des créatures magiques comme des lutins.
A wooden elf and some real elves announce the arrival of a person of international fame, Santa Claus. In the very heart of Lapland, he prepares for the long trip that will take him to homes around the world. Christmas lights up all Finland's cities. Before the holidays, outdoor markets appear everywhere, with a stunning variety of Christmas decorations, jewelry, clothing, and culinary specialties, all to celebrate the event. In the south of the country, Christmas is an occasion to honor St. Lucia. This celebration is Swedish in origin. A young woman is chosen to wear the crown of candles and to sing out the message of the next coming of the child Jesus. Christmas wouldn't be the same without a good meal. Some establishments use a vivid imagination to transport their dinner guests to seventh heaven. Even the best restaurants cannot compete with a traditional, creative, and delicious home-cooked meal. The famous Finnish Christmas buffet is a display of all the country's most appetizing dishes. Satisfied, we escape for a moment to a more appropriate environment to savor some glögg, a local specialty. This mulled wine should be consumed in moderation and without ice cubes. In Finland, Christmas religion and myths intermingle. The legend begins with the arrival of a reindeer named Rudolph, pulling a sleigh in front of some surprised bystanders. It is Santa Claus' sleigh. Every year, thousands of guests come from the four corners of the planet to visit the superstar and discover his village. Santa Claus sees dozens of children every day in his study. Myth cannot keep the commercial reality at bay, and the shops lining the street in honor of the local celebrity occupy the biggest part of the village. Characters from fairy tales are busy in the village square, winter and summer. Busy is the magic word at the post office, a strategic location for Santa Claus.
We are now in my post office in Article Circle. And this is about 9 kilometers from Rovaniemi, the capital city of Lapland. We received about 700,000 letters every year. Last year we got about 160 different countries.
Santa Claus, assisted by his helpful elves, answers all the letters by mail and even, as progress would have it, via the internet.
Me Merry Christmas to everybody and Happy New Year.
Rovaniemi is the biggest city in Lapland and is situated on the edge of Uunasjoki. The city was devastated by the Germans at the end of the Second World War and rebuilt in 1945 under the supervision of the famous Finnish architect Alvar Aalto. Arcticum, Lapland's finest museum and Arctic center, is a reminder that in spite of conflict, customs live on. In Arcticum, there are exhibits of the Laplanders' colorful way of dress, almost as rare today as their nomadic habitat. Another important exhibit is reserved for Arctic fauna. Here you can see a wolf, a seal, an ermine, a brown bear, a polar bear, and naturally, reindeer. Rovaniemi actually brings tons of snow into the city center for a celebration that includes the latter. The track is ready and the reindeer races are announced. The competitors are introduced, not always as tame as legend would have it. Some words of encouragement from the local celebrity. One must concentrate on getting a good start. The reindeer race begins.
Siellä on lähtö valmiina, eli 5. lähtö on valmiina. Numero 1 on lähtenyt. Sieltä lähdettiin tasapäisin tullaan. Ja tämä on todellakin tasapäistä meininkiä. Tässä ei anneta kyllä peli. Siellä valmiina näin tullaan. Siellä tullaan miljoonaa. Benefon ja nopsajalka ja puhutaan siitä vielä sen verran.
The port of Kemi is a major commercial harbor and crossroads for the forestry industry. Kemi has preserved only a few pre-war buildings. As in Rovaniemi's case, Kemi was almost destroyed by German troops. Everything here seems to have another dimension. The remarkable wooden houses, ice sculptures, and the items sheltered in the semi-precious stone museum. More than 3,000 stones found around the world are exhibited next to the beautiful spectrolite stone that is only found in Lapland. There are replicas of precious jewelry worn by Marie Antoinette, a crown of England's Queen Elizabeth II, and one made in 1918 for the King of Finland who never took the throne. A king is not a king without a castle, and Kemi's castle is short-lived. This ice castle is rebuilt every winter with 20,000 cubic meters of snow and 100 cubic meters of ice. Inside, a nicey art gallery exhibits the works of artists brought in from the cold. Religious services are given in the chapel, and fortunately, the benches are covered with reindeer skins. The castle has a bar that serves warm drinks during the evening in an aristocratic setting. It is important to be able to get around on the Baltic Sea's ice fields during the long Lap winters. Snowmobiles have now replaced the sleds pulled by reindeer. The reindeer were quieter, but the pleasure of crossing immense virgin spaces hasn't diminished. The slow movement of the icebreakers that crash their way through the frozen sea reminds us of the economic importance of maritime access. These powerful ships ensure continuity of trade relations from the Gulf of Bothnia and Helsinki during the long winter months. The captain of the Sampo describes his mission.
The Sampo is only one icebreaker in the world which are taking tourists with the cruisings, and now we are making one of these cruisings. This Sampo is working about in the middle from December to the end of April. Well, we need icebreakers here in Finland. Many icebreakers, they are owned by the government because we have a hard winter and much ice, and that's why the government needs also icebreakers to assist ships out and in the harbors. Now the ice is about 40 to 50 centimeters here outside, but quite near the strand it is about 1 meter or 80 centimeters.
The icebreaker may take a break from time to take on new passengers. A little break is a good time to take a refreshing dip in the sea. Once dressed in a special thermal suit, the ice field can almost feel comfortable even if the temperature is 20 below.
It's wonderful, I loved it.
The Finns like the ice and snow because it brings them, as they say, the long-lasting light of a winter's night. The road that leads even further north into the heart of Lapland crosses a region where trees become more and more sparse. Here are the first signs of the hills. Most of these snow-covered hills rarely exceed 1,000 meters in altitude, but still provide a perfect setting for numerous winter sports. Livi is a small ski resort about 200 kilometers from Rovaniemi.
Our ski season is basically 7 months a year. You can say mostly from the October till May. You can practice here downhill skiing, telemark skiing, cross-country skiing or snowboarding.
In Finland, roads are divided to accommodate all types of travel on ice and snow. Cross-country skiing is an excellent way to discover places where roads cannot go, and sometimes requires a lot of equipment and strength. When the snow gets too deep, the best way to cross it is on snowshoes. Today, a lighter plastic version has replaced the former wood frame, sinew, and leather straps. In a relatively flat country, rock climbers can still satisfy the need to conquer new heights by scaling some dramatic ice-covered cliffs. Once inside the Arctic Circle, weather conditions can be very harsh. Snowstorms make driving difficult, and any refuge from the climate is appealing, especially in a kesämoki cottage. These old country houses are set off the beaten track beside a lake or at the edge of a forest. Inside, one finds a touch of nostalgia, the smell of wood and dried plants. They provide comfort and warmth, particularly in the corner by the fireplace, where time passes slowly, very slowly. Going out in these extreme conditions is to face the impossible. Riding a horse here is another. The Icelandic horses are accustomed to even the lowest temperatures and make a rather charming companion. Lapland is reindeer country. These deer have been a basic resource for Laplanders for over 1,000 years. Even if Lapland has other sources of income nowadays, reindeer farming is still very much alive.
We breed the reindeer. This animal means everything to us. It's our bread and butter. We use just about every part of the deer. The skins are used in their entirety. We make hats and boots out of them. We make various objects like chandeliers with the antlers. It's important to know that the male loses its antlers every year while the female keeps hers. When she is pregnant, she needs them to defend herself when she's looking for food.
The Ivalo airport is the furthest north in Finland. Lake Inari is the country's third largest lake and is strewn with over 3,000 islands. The lake represents an earthly release of a divine spirit for Laplanders. Houses are rare along the banks, and the population is clustered together in the comfort of a small town, situated in the middle of the meandering Ivalojoki River. Ivalo is the administrative center for the municipality of Inari, and daily life in the village is largely governed by the climatic conditions. Electricity might prevent a motor from freezing on the spot today, but manual labor still comes in handy. These drawbacks were nothing compared to those the gold prospectors faced in Lapland up until the end of the 1930s. They were pragmatic with their measurements. A gram of gold equals 10 matches. Russia is not far away. The border is only 20 kilometers from Ivalo, near Nelim. A sign makes sure it's clearly marked. There is no customs office here to survey the end of the road, as the sign says. Cars turn around. Only the reindeer do not need visas here. A blanket of snow and ice covers everything. Getting around has its risks. Only the snowmobiles can go everywhere. On Lake Inari, it is not only used to move about, but also for pleasure, with a possible culinary outcome. A long drill is used to cut through the ice, and the fishing begins.
Brown trout, salmon, grayling, whitefish, Arctic trout. Today it's in the morning it was 21 minus degrees. Now it's maybe 15 minus. Ice is here about 70 centimeters now. It can be 1 meter.
These wooden buildings can easily stand up to even the lowest temperatures, which can drop to 50 degrees below zero. Living in an igloo is more rudimentary and sporadic. Therefore, it now has an anecdotal quality and is only reserved for nostalgic travelers who want to experience the big chill for themselves. Another big chill is the one some Finns look for on their way out of the sauna. A quick and very invigorating dip. Today it's only minus 27 degrees. Some sports enthusiasts do not need to break the ice to participate in their favorite activity. Others just need a small hole. Sport rhymes with sled for these huskies. A lot of training is necessary to employ this old method of transportation that unites tradition, action, and adventure. Bathed alternately by a radiant and soothing light, of endless days and aurora borealis nights, Finland has been able to keep its nature intact, even up here. Nature that gives the country its wealth, influences the way of life of all its inhabitants, and inspires its artists. Topelius the poet wrote, "The blue of our lakes and the snow of our winters, these are the colors of Finland."